I thought it was time to make a video. So here we go. I thought this time I'm going to make a video that's actually useful because, you know, YouTube is full of not useful stuff. So let's do something useful, shall we? I thought it'd be fun to try and put together a big Airtable database and kind of show you how I would do an Airtable database of Game Boy games, trying to put together like some Moby Games data with some price charting data, trying to make a bit of a parent-child relationship, and showing folks, showing you guys why I like Airtable. So I've got my notes here. I'm going to try and keep on track. But I'm going to show you what I've got here on the left. I've got basically this collection of CSVs, right? So I'm going to start with the Game Boy list. So I'm on a Mac, and so I picked up this application called Easy CSV Editor. Horrible name for an application, but it's a lot less of a pain in the butt than using numbers or subscribing to Microsoft 365 or whatever to get, a spreadsheet. I just want to manipulate data as CSVs. I don't even want a spreadsheet. I just want to open CSVs and edit them. I've got a similar app for JSON stuff. But this one's nice because I buy it once and I've got it. So what I've done here is I've downloaded the price charting data, and I'm on the retailer plan. So this comes with stuff like GameStop price and how much, a retailer would offer you if they were buying Game Boy games from you. So I've got this list. But the problem with this is what you'll find is there's going to be a whole bunch of junk in here. Like if you want a list of Game Boy games, you don't necessarily want all these like new analog pocket things in here. And you'll get stuff like, hey, here's Avenging Spirit, and there's 2 different variants of it. So what I want to do is, in Airtable, I want to set up a parent and a child relationship. So this is where taking out of a regular spreadsheet and going into a database is a lot handier. So I've started a brand new from scratch database, and by default they give you all these fields that you don't want. They're going to show you all this nag stuff on the side and tell you can put your data in here. I'm going to close this. I don't use it, and I'm going to delete these fields that I don't want, because by default it adds these fields and I don't want these fields. So Airtable is basically baby's first database. I like to use it because you can basically prototype a database very quickly with it, and it's great for moving data around. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use the extensions. This is one of the reasons I like Airtable the most. So in here, because I'm on the $20 a month plan, I'm going to use the CSV import. I use this a lot. Now the thing is, when I go to import this, say I went into this game list, and I'm going to go with the Game Boy list, you'll see that I only have one field right now, right? So in here, there's a few options. Once you've set up, you can basically re-import a CSV again and again once you've got all your field mappings, right? So if in your spreadsheet ID is the title, in this case I'm going to say probably product name, that would be the title of the record, all right? So your CSV, you want to check this, because in this price charting one, where did we go here? You'll see that the very top row, these are the titles of the fields. And so we want to make fields similar to that. So I'm going to be using this CSV importer, but what you'll see is I don't have any fields yet. So I can't map anything to anything yet until I actually sit down and set up the fields. So I'm going to cancel out of here. But now you can see that I've got this on the side. And you got these things called dashboard and CSV. It looks kind of complicated. It's just kind of nice to rename these. So I usually call this like imports or import. And I'm going to call this like price charting import so that I remember what it is. Because once you set up that sort of block, it's set up the same way. So if I wanted to keep using that block each time I want to update the data, I just want to leave that block as is, right? I'm going to import into one place. It's going to be set up a certain way. And then the next time I go to import it again, I'll just use the same field, right? I'll use all the same mappings. So one thing you can do is use their built-in importer like I showed you before. So I could go import from CSV, and I'm going to do this vanilla just to show you how to not do it first. So I'm going to look for my local file. So it's right here. I'm just going to drag it in. Obviously, you can just click to navigate. So if I import that, what you're going to see is I get this choice. Do I want to put it into the games table or want to create a new one? So I'm going to create a new table just to show you what happens. And this is your default. So the field on the left is your primary key, your primary field for the database. So I don't necessarily want to name the records like this, so I'm just going to import it to show you what happens. But before you import, you can see it actually has this little icon on the left of the title of each of these fields, right? You can see that this A is different than this little drop-down button, and this is a little number symbol. And you can see that these are different field types. So if I wanted to, instead of console name, like that looks good as a drop-down, this one is currently a long text, but I know that it's not that long, so I'm going to make it single line text. And then price is definitely not long text. I would actually rather have that be a number. But what I'm going to do instead is doing that here. When I'm using this import, and I'd suggest this for anybody who uses Airtable, just import it. Don't even worry about rejigging the fields yet. We can do that later. So I'm just going to show you what this looks like. By default, it's going to call it imported table. A really meaningful name. And you can see what's happened here is now they've made the primary field of this database table, because each of these tabs, it's not a spreadsheet, it's not a sheet, it's a table. And we'll get into that later. Obviously, anyone who knows databases already, you can just ignore me. You know this stuff. But I don't really like having the primary key as that, because if I go to make an alternate view of the same data, which is why I like Airtable, say I want to make a gallery. If I make a gallery, you're going to see that the big text up here is that number, which really doesn't mean anything to anyone. So if I was sharing this view with someone, they'd be like, oh, okay. It would look, I wouldn't see James Bond right away. I would see 28888. So I would rather have the primary key be like the title. I kind of like the title being the name of the thing. So I'm actually going to just delete this for now. And I'm going to go back to my CSV editor. Obviously, you can use Excel or whatever you want, but I like to do a little bit of grooming before I bring my data into Airtable. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to cut this. Oops, sorry. I'm going to cut the name of the product name, right? So I'm going to put in a column before, and I'm just going to paste it here. And you can do this in Excel pretty easily, I'm sure. This is not rocket science. So there you go. So now the ID is not the primary field, it's just another one of the many fields in here. So now I'm going to save this. Takes a second. I'm going to close that. And I'll go back here. And now I will try again. So this time I'm going to go back to CSV. I'm going to browse for files. I'm going to get that price charting list and upload it. So it's going to give me the same thing, create a new table, which I'm going to do. And this time you'll see, look at that. I'm going to make this a single line text. But now it's going to import it more how I would like it to be. So I'm going to do that again. And you can see you can very quickly gain a big list of data in Airtable that you can munch. So now I've got a list. I've got a whole bunch of stuff in here. And I'm going to actually delete this previous thing. Just get rid of it altogether. And I'm going to call this games. Now, we'll get into sort of grooming this, because obviously there's a bunch of stuff in here we don't want. All of these analog pocket things, while great to know about them, I don't actually want them in a list of games, so I'm going to take them out. So one thing I will often do is I will actually import, if I'm trying to do a parent-child relationship like this, I'll import the same thing twice. So I'm going to actually import it twice. And I'm going to call this one releases. So this is similar to Discogs. If you go to Discogs for a sec, and I'll go to oops. This is obviously about music, but if I go to one of these albums, you'll see that, okay, say for example, I go to this band and I see they've got a bunch of releases. I'm going to pick one of these. I'm going to pick this, like this record from 2005. You can see this is the parent, so this says the information about the release. But then underneath you've got the variants. So each of the variants has its own page as well. So I can go to this page, and now I'm seeing this is specifically the CD released in 2005 on Rykodisc. It's got the ID tag assigned to it and all of your statistics about the marketplace, like what it costs, the lowest, the highest, when it was last sold, etc. So I just show that as an example because that's kind of what we're going to emulate here. So I'm going to import this as a new table again. And just this one field I'm going to change to this. So, excuse the redundancy, here we go. We're going to do it 2 times. So now this is releases. So this is all the variants, right? So what we're going to be doing is cutting out of this later. Like we're going to reduce this list. And this list is going to stay pretty much the same. I'm going to leave all these analog pockets in the releases level. And what I'll probably do is link those elsewhere. So let's see. What I'm going to do here now, this is how you can make a quick relationship. So I'll just duplicate the field. And I'll call this release. And then to really quickly join this 2 datas, I can just change this. Oops, sorry, I was a bit fast. So I changed the field type to this link to another record. This is the number one thing you want to do in Airtable, is really this linkages between your tables. So now you've got a relational database. So I'm going to change this to link to the release. I'm going to pick the releases table. I'm not going to allow linking to multiple records, and I'm not going to do any of this other fancy stuff. I'm just going to keep it plain Jane. So I do that. And there we go. So now we've got our initial set of releases. And then if I scroll to the very side over here, you'll see that I've got relationships, right? So this is something I'll obviously have to clean up because there's a whole bunch of alleyways. I'm going to have to sort this. But this is just an example of how you could very quickly have relationships between two database tables. So a lot of this is garbage right now because we haven't done anything with it. And also this is going to be wrong because there's a bunch of stuff linked to places. So I'm going to have to clean up this list later. And I also have some stuff in here, like I've got a Japanese list of games because I want to actually get the kanji into here as well. So I'm going to try and tackle that later. And you can see I've also got, okay, here's the price charting, but here's the Moby Games list. So now what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and import the same thing in there. And I'm just going to say, I'm going to rename this to price charting ID or ID price charting so that I remember what it is. So now that's a number field. And there we go. Okay, so now I'm going to add again. And now I'm going to show you this CSV importer thing. So just for fun, I'm going to show you what it looks like to merge into an existing database. So it's going to take a minute because it's a bunch of data. But this is where merge with existing records matters. So that's why I did this really quickly, just imported price charting twice just to show you, mocking this up quickly. So what we're going to be looking for is product name is going to be the key. We want to make sure we don't have any duplicate file names. So we're going to merge into the existing records that are already there. And so it's going to say, okay, there you go. It's got all these existing records. And this is where you can change your mapping. So in this case, I've renamed ID price charting. It used to be called ID. Now I can remap that and go, okay, ID should go into this ID price charting field. This just gives you a little bit more control, and you can import more records. So the reason you use this is that you can do 25,000 records this way for your imports, whereas the other one I think is like 10,000, like the one that you can do at the top. So I'm going to cancel out and show you, but if you use this add or import function from the top, where you're importing from a sheet or Excel doc or CSV, it's fewer items that you can import. It's more like 10,000 or something. So instead, what we're going to do is use this sidebar. So now what I'm going to do is to add this, I'm going to look at the records in this Moby Games list. And it's a CSV. It's going to give me that nag. And let's see, I'm going to grab this data here. Ooh, this is kind of messed up. This will happen sometimes when you're dealing with data. So what it looks like is we've got comma separated. We got the values of ID, title, release year. So see that separation? It looks like it was a space separated for some reason, or tab. Moby score, URL, and genres. So these are the fields I'm just going to throw into the Airtable. So back to this, I'm going to go 2 sides of the screen, and I would just add these fields. So I'm going to rename this now to title. And I'm going to go, I need a new ID field. So now what you can do is you can actually duplicate a field. So I'm just going to do this. I'm not going to duplicate the contents. I'm just going to duplicate the field itself. That way it's a quick way to just get a number field. And by default, it will just put copy at the end, or copy 2, copy 3, copy 4, and it'll just keep incrementing up. So I'm going to call this ID Moby. 0 decimal places, and good to go. Okay, so that's that one. And then we need release year, which is a good one. So we're going to do this. And for now, I'm going to show you making it just a field. So I'm going to call it release year. And I'm not even going to put anything in my single select field, right? So this is, if I look at this, this is called a single select. There's also a multi-select if you want to be able to choose multiple things as part of that record, like a line item. This time I'm just going to do single select. And I'll show you converting that to something else later. So what do we got here next? We got Moby score. And that's going to be a numerical field. So I'm going to duplicate this again. I'm going to call this Moby score. And actually this is bothering me. Release year. So I'm going to try and be consistent with price charting. So I'm going to do dashes before I get too crazy here. Sorry if I'm renaming. But this is what I like. You can just basically change stuff. Like if, you know, it's good to just set up a free Airtable and just try it. And try converting stuff to related fields. Like this is where the power will come in, and I'll show you that in a minute. So there we go. Release year, console name. Now we need genres. So for genres, if you look at what Moby has got in their thing, it's like this great big messy sort of blob of comma separated values. It's hard to see because this is so buggered in this view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call this a multi-select field, and I'm going to say that this is genres. Now I don't think it's genres as much as sort of attributes, like, because they're kind of a weird combination of descriptions and everything. But for simplicity's sake, I'm going to leave it like that. And now we just need one more field, which is we need the URL. So again, I'm just mirroring what this spreadsheet has. It's just hard to read at the minute. So here we go. It's URL. And to keep it easy, I'm going to call it URL. So now I'll make this big again. Open this extensions. And now I'm going to add a new extension. So this is where you can, like, basically this is like a dashboard. So you can add multiple blocks into here, including your own stuff. So if you wanted to run little JavaScript applets, you can do that with the scripting block. But what I'm going to be doing, actually the page designer is really cool, but I'm going to be doing the simple stuff. So CSV. And before I forget it, I'm going to call it Moby Games to Games Import. Just because I called the table games, so there we go. So now you can see it's going to create a whole bunch of new records. But what I first want to do is say, let's merge it. So now I can see that at the bottom left, you'll see some stats. 699 of these are already in there. And this is exact match, right? So if it's called like Adam's family, comma, the, it's not going to be the same. It's going to create a new record in this table in the database because it doesn't have that. So what we need to do is just import it, and then we'll clean it up in a minute. And the interesting thing about this is, like, between Mobi, my Japanese list, the price charting lists, each of them is kind of missing something. So this allows you to kind of put the crap back together again, which I like. So what we're going to do here is scroll down to the bottom. So genres is mapped well. That's good. URL is also coming in. So I can see this is the Mobi Games URL for this. And again, I'm just doing this so that it's an easy jumping off point to get over to Mobi. Mobi score, because it was not exactly the same, is now I have to change this because this has a space, this has a dash. Same thing with release year, and this is how you map it. So there you go. And I really want this ID. The ID really matters to me because then in the future, it's like, okay, well, this is the price charting ID, this is the Mobi ID. It's nice to have a key for each thing that you do. So here we go. I'm gonna go into here. Ooh, actually, you know what? Before we go too far, let's just look at these review scores. I think Mobi might use decimal points. So I'm going to cancel for 1 second. And I'm going to look at this review score, Mobi score. So this one right now is set to be an integer with no decimal places. So I'm going to add 2 just in case. I can change it later. What happens sometimes, I found, and maybe I'm just paranoid, but I've tried importing when the field type is an integer, but then it's a decimal, like it's a multiple decimal points of accuracy in the spreadsheet. When I go to import it onto this side, then suddenly I've lost the data. So I don't want to lose any data, so that's why I went backwards 1 step. So I'm going to redo this again, Mobi Games. Okay, so because I've already started mapping it, you can see here, it was good that I made that change because look at that. Now this is 2 decimal points of accuracy. And that's enough. I don't need to get more. It's just a review score. And it's just for personal reference anyways, so it doesn't really matter. So we're going to be creating 300 records. We're going to be updating 700. And then it's going to automatically add all of these select options. So that's what this means is this genres list, how it's got like action, arcade, side view, sci-fi. See what I mean about it's not quite genre, like side view is not a genre. Anyways, this is just what they call it in their data. I think it's stupid, but whatever. So let's go ahead and save it. And now we're going to be importing these records. It's going to update stuff. And this will give us a chance that I can show you some of the tools that I would use to clean this up. So now you can see we've got a whole bunch of new data added. So now we've got price charting along with the Mobi data, right? So I can see that I've got all the Mobi genres. I've got the release scores, or release years rather. I've got the scores for the how well people reviewed it on their site. Whether that matters or not, who knows? But some of these I actually want to make more of a drop down. I don't want to make it, or I want to make it a related table. So one thing you can do really quickly is if you change a field that already has data in it, like this release year, you can actually change it to link to another record and create a new table. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a new table. I'm going to make the release year change from a select field to now a table of its own. I'm not going to allow linking to multiple records, and I'm going to hit save. And what's going to happen is now it's going to look different. It's not going to be as colorful. Sorry, but now I've got a year right here, and I can see there's a whole bunch of years that are covered, and you can see these are all of the games that link to that year. So there's only one in 2010, for example. But hey, say maybe I want to know how many games came out for each of these years. Well, here's where I just add a field. I scroll to the bottom, and I just add a count. And I want to see how many games. Boom. There we go. Now if I want to get really fancy, I can go over here, I can add a chart, and I can say, show me, the years, show me a line chart of the count of games along a year. Let's see, how do I do this again? Let's do bar chart. That's what I'm looking for. Number of games. No, I want year. Name of year. and I want to go field, and I'm going to go count. That's what I want. So x-axis is the year, right? It's called name right now. I should have renamed it to year. And then this is how many games came out. If I go done, and then I close this, you'll see I've got a nice little sidebar chart I can reference anytime. So look at that. Okay, I can see that there are 161 games potentially came out in 1990. See how fast that was? I mean, yeah, I'm a slow teacher. I apologize, but it gives you kind of a sense of how quickly you can just analyze data. So I'm going to do the same thing with some of these other fields. So release year is good. I want to do the same for genre. I'm going to change that to link to another record. And quite honestly, the name sucks, so I'm going to call it like attributes. I'm sorry if you don't like that naming. I'm a bad person. It's okay. You can build your own database and make it name something different. So I'm going to make a new table, link to multiple records, show this, attributes, and there we go. I didn't capitalize it. I should. There we go. I'll call these an attribute. Ta-da! And now I can do the same thing. I'm going to add a new record, or a new column. I'm going to add a count. I'm going to count it up. Boom! There we go. And now if I want to get fancy and sort it like a spreadsheet, I can go, sort it by the number of games. Oh, there's only one visual novel. See how much their data sucks? Well, that shows you right there. Okay. Action, 645, 507 side view, 2D scrolling, licensed. Does this matter? No, but it's kind of cool and interesting. So there you go. Same thing, console name. I'm going to make this a link to another record. I'm going to create a new table. I'm going to call this console. I'm going to call this console. I'm going to hit this. I'm going to go save. And now the great thing is it will preserve this. So each time you go to import the price charting data on this sidebar, it's going to stay a relational table. So this Game Boy, Japanese Game Boy, and PAL Game Boy list will stay there. If a new type gets added, it'll just add a new record to this console table, which is great. So I'm going to go count. Ta-da! Number of games. Boom! There we got a game count. Is this right? I don't know. Don't care right now. So that's the first thing. Okay, cool. Now, next up. There's a little bit of setting it up. I was going to show you a little bit of if you wanted to say grab Wikipedia. So Wikipedia's got some list pages like this. A lot of times I'll actually use something like any web page that's got a table of text in it. I'll just pull it out. I don't even have to do any really fancy scraping. You could do this with a scraper like Octoparse or whatever, some Python scripting. I'm just going to use Google Sheets. And look at this. If I use import HTML, and then I put the URL between double quotes, put a comma, and then it's a table, so I put a table, and then I have to figure out which one it is on this page. Is it the first table? Is it the second table? Is it the third table? Etc. And what it'll do is it'll give you all the data, right? So here it all is. Now if I go to change it, oh, why won't it change? That's weird. Well, let's delete this. Oh, what happened? Oh, it deletes everything. Guess why? Well, because it's just a formula. So what you need to be able to do to actually use this information somewhere else is you need to copy it, pull open a new tab, and then I just paste special. So I paste values only. Boom. And then, of course, you got to do all the cleanup to this mess. So just to make sure you can see it, double-click this, and you're like, okay, now I can see it. And there's too many stars, so maybe I'll go and get rid of the stars and replace those. I'm going to replace them with nothing. Replace all. This might... No, I don't want to do that. I just want to do it in this sheet. Ta-da. Oh, I don't know if I even did it. So you'll see it's fiddly as heck, but it works. Star. This sheet. Replace all. Boom. Done. Again, not perfect, but you could work with this data. Personally, I'm not going to bother right now. I think some of this would be handy, though. Like, I'd like to have the list of developers that's in here, just as a starting point, so perhaps I will clean this up. I like these release dates as well. That's nice. But we'll get back to that. That's something that you could do if you wanted to bring over more info into your database. So I think the interesting thing is when you start making multiple views from the same data or doing calculations. So what I really like is, okay, these 3 or 4 Daedaluses, like the reality is they're probably all the same game. I don't know. I don't know what Daedalus is. I'm sure it's probably the same thing. So I'm going to change this to go allow linking to multiple records. And then I'm going to go delete this. I'm going to go dead, yes. And again, if this is not accurate, I'm so sorry. I'm just showing you a demo. So dead, yes, in Cube 8. And I put all of those there. So I can delete that. And then I don't care about these 3, so I'm going to delete them. Delete! Okay, now remember Dedius, whatever it's called, this game. I'm sorry to the homebrew dev, I've never played it. It's probably good, don't know anything about it. So when I go into any of these now, we need to make this price charting data useful. So what we need to do is change these fields from text fields to either a number field or a currency field. Now the great thing about currency is you can set it to be yen if you want. I do that in a lot of my databases. Like because I'm working on the Koei stuff, I use yen a lot. But in this case it's $sign, so it makes it easy. That's the default. And you'll see it automatically right justifies it. So we're going to do that for each of these fields. And I'll probably speed this up. Okay, so finished that. So now let's try and do something fun with this data. We've got stuff that's linked up. We've got these values underneath. So now I want to see the value of Daedalus, right? I want to see the average across all the different variants, and I want to count up how many variants there are. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new field, and everything hinges off of the related records. So you have to look stuff up. So basically I'm going to insert a field, and it's going to scroll down to the bottom where most of these like lookups are. So roll up, count, and lookup are the 3 that you use to pull data from another source, right? So the linked record in releases, I could roll up or count, right? So in this case, I'm going to count the number of releases against a game. I'm going to say number of variants. And there you go. So now you can see I did the 4 releases on these variants. Now I'm going to add another field, and I'm going to calculate some stuff. This is where it gets really interesting. So I'm going to roll up the release, and I'm going to look up the, I don't know, the loose price. What's the average loose price? Right? So it's just like Excel. You can put in formulas as a formula field or into roll-up fields, and I call this loose price. You can add a description, so then I can say average loose price according to price charting. Yes, I know price charting data is often awful. Right. It's because I double imported, so I'm going to already have a field called loose price. So there you go. Here's the loose price. On average, $50 across all 4 of them. Now, if I look up the collector's edition, it's going to be, blank. Okay. Price charting. So good. Okay, let's look up this one. Loose price, nothing. Okay, next one. Loose price, nothing. Okay, dead, $50. There we go. So it looks like we've got some prices under CIB. So let's do CIB now. So I'm going to just duplicate this field just to save myself some work. I'm going to call this CIB price average. And I'm just going to change the field. So now I'm going to look up the average price of CIBs, complete in box, or cartridge instructions in box, whichever you prefer. I don't think price charting knows either. Okay, so there we go, $97 across each of them. Now you'll see that Daedalus is 87 on Collector's Edition, and then there's the Homebrew one that has no value, and then there's the Incubate, which apparently has nothing either. But Daedalus is CIB 114, so you've basically got the average of those two. So the great thing is it does that automatically. Anytime you just change something, change what's linked to or whatever, it will update all those numbers. This is in real time. Now, cool thing is the price charting stuff actually comes with some other cool info, such as the number of items that they track. So I like that one a lot. This is under sales volume. So under sales volume, you can see, show me the total sales per year, like price charting. Let's see, sales volume total, or some shorter. And there you go. Now you can actually sort the entire list. You can see that on average, they have 85,000 tracked sales. So like when you go to price charting, you'll see that there's like, oh, okay, we tracked 37 copies of, or whatever, 22 copies of Cool Spot, right? This is 6 across all 4 variants. So they have like no data about this Dedius, right? But you can see, of course, the popular stuff, Donkey Kong, 344, right? But again, this is annual that they are tracking, and that's across all the loose CIB, etc. So you can see that actually it's not statistically significant, which should be a flag to you, that these prices, even if it was perfectly accurate and they actually tracked the condition of each item, they're still not statistically significant enough in their tracking to actually really truly know what something is worth. And it has nothing to do with conditional rarity. They don't do any of that. So obviously you can see that it's a mess. However, it's one of the best pieces of data that we have on the internet. It's a reasonable subscription price, and yeah, you can get a lot out of it. So now I wanted to show you a little bit about how to deduplicate. So this is one of my favorite things in Airtable, is this, cleaning stuff up. So I'm going to look for the dedupe. And what's nice about this is you can basically kind of look for fuzzy matches. So I'm going to look through the games. I'm going to look for games so you can see I've got exact matches. There's like 333 of them. There's 416 similar, and there's 477 fuzzy. So you can see what's great about fuzzy is you get this, like, you see these alternate names that are really similar but not quite the same, like 4-in-1 versus 4 space in space 1. It's a good way to find that kind of stuff. So what it gives you when you go to this view is it will show you all 3 records that it thinks are similar, right? And so the good thing is you can actually merge data intelligently from here. So one thing I usually do is I click this hide identical fields. It's just a lot easier. So what I'll tend to do is I'll go, okay, keep this one, and then I want this data point, right? So it's going to chuck these 2 records away, but I want these 2 fields both preserved. So it's actually going to merge them back together. So now at the end, it's going to be linked to Game Boy and PAL Game Boy, which is really nice. Now we can ignore this stuff here because we already have it in the releases table, and we're going to eventually delete it out of the games table because we won't need it. We only need the price charting data really at the releases level. We just imported it twice to make it quicker to set up the data with less deduplication. So you can see here, I want to keep the UPC from there. I want to keep that genre. I want to keep this ASAN. That's the Amazon ID. I think this is the eBay ID. Release date, I don't really care yet because each release has got a different release date, obviously. But I want to merge these releases because I want this new James Bond to contain all the stuff underneath, right? So we're trying to merge this all together. So now I want the Moby Games info. So I want the ID, the release year. These obviously don't have it, so I don't want to keep this blank information. I want to keep this. So you can see here, now I put this together, and it will go, are you sure you want to merge it? And I go, yeah, shut up. There we go. Click merge. Takes a second to think, and done. There you go. Same thing here. We could go and repeat this process over and over and over again. In this case, I'll put these two together. And if I do this wrong, just forgive me. I don't care right now because I'm just trying to demonstrate kind of functionally how I would do it. So we got those merged together. Boom. And you would just repeat the same process. So here's 4-in-1 Fun Pack. I can see that this is the more common name, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to choose these three. I don't care about the prices in this table. I want the UPC. Sales volume I don't care about because it's going to come in elsewhere. The genre is better as board and card. And I want to keep all these releases together, so that's important. Now I want to keep this and this. And again, if I made a mistake, and there are actually two, because there's actually two Moby entries for this 4-in-1 Fun Pack, so maybe there's two of them. I don't know enough nor care enough. So I'm going to pick this one. No, it looks like it's duplicated. It looks like it just added it to both. So it's the same information, so we're safe. So I'm going to go this. I'm going to merge these together. There you go. And you would just repeat that over and over and over again. So that's dedupe. It's super handy. Again, I like to rename these, so redupe games, and then I might do dedupe releases, and I would keep going through these. So let's just really quickly, we can close this to gain ourselves some space. I'm going to get rid of all the price stuff from this games level because we don't need it. We've put it elsewhere. Because what we're trying to do is take one data source and separate it. We're trying to put it as a parent and child. Like the game is the master, and then the releases underneath that are the supporters. So, go. And I'm also getting rid of UPC, again, because it's also at the releases level, so we don't need it. Sales volume I also don't need because we have it in this releases tab. Remember, we've got the same information twice. So get rid of that, and we don't want duplicates. We really don't. Release days, same thing. We could get rid of that. And there we go. So that should be a lot better. Now, genre... Yeah, this one came from PriceCharting, so it's going to collide with this attribute stuff, but we'll need it later because we want to get rid of everything that's accessories or whatever, right? So one thing that you can do when you're cleaning this up, say for example, I want to clean this data up. I'm just going to drag this over. I'm going to group by this genre field because these are all the ones that came in from Moby games, and I can tell because they've got this Moby URL, right? So I can see they've got no price charting ID, but they do have an ID from Moby. So these are like the 300 we're going to have to merge together with the others. But you can see here I've got action adventure. Those are fine. But accessories we don't care about here. We don't want them at the game level. So again, because this is just a duplicate, I'm actually going to delete 92 records. Yikes. Just want to scare you. Okay, other. That's the games, platformers. Shoot them up, that's fine. Systems, not fine. We're going to delete all the systems. And again, the reason we're doing that is because we don't want them at the games level. We want them in consoles and accessories as separate clean tables. Educational, that's fine. Racing, sports, board and card. The nice thing about doing this too is I like seeing these counts, right? So this is just really quickly, I can actually count up how many items are in each of these groupings, right? So it's really nice to see, okay, really quickly, at a glance, I can see what's categorized where. I can see that in price charting, they just chuck everything under action and adventure, right? You can tell that they just overuse it. And I know just looking at it that half of it's going to be wrong. So, yeah, again, don't care right now. It's just for the exercise. So now that we're done that, I'm going to delete this because I did it. there we go. So we got rid of all the junk. So now that gives you kind of a sense of this one, right? And now what I want to do is I want to make this visual, because it drives me nuts that it's not visual. So the best thing about Airtable for a lot of people is just the fact that you can just put in images. Spreadsheets suck at images, plus you can't get alternate views of stuff. So what I like to do is go, okay, give me this, here's a list of a game, blah, blah, blah. Okay, go grab me an image and chuck it in. So I'll show you how I would typically do this, but first I'll show you why. So a gallery view, if I create this, I'll be like Game Boy Games. What you can see here is now you've got this sort of card-based system, which is really, really nice, right? I can see these are all the releases. I can see the genre. If I want to, I can put in like sales volume, how many are sold, etc. And I can do some calculations, which is really good. So I like having this sort of very visual view of stuff, and you can share them, right? So I could create a link, and I could share this view, and I could share it with whoever, and I go, ta-da, here we go. Now this is what somebody who's not logged in could look at. They don't have to log into Airtable. They don't have an account. You don't have to add them to your database. They can just see it. And they can do all the same sort of filters, right? So they could go filter, show me where the CIB price is, I don't know, over $100, boom, and then it'll filter the whole list, right? And the great thing is it's live. So if I make a change here, it will automatically reflect there, right? So what I'll probably do is take this Addams Family Pugsley, and I'll show you that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I would search for images. So this Pugsley scavenger hunt was the one that I saw on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Google Images. I'm going to search. Now again, there's lots of ways to do this, but I'm going to go Game Boy. I go to here, and then I'm going to get this big ugly URL, and that's what I want. So here we go. I got this big ugly view, and now I'm going to add a button, and this is where Airtable gets fun. So at the very bottom, you can add a button type. So what in here, you can use formulas. So I'm actually going to concatenate. And to make this easier to read, I'm doing like enter key. So you basically, it's comma separated values, right? So what you need to be able to do is find this string in the middle, this query equals. So see, like in this big ugly thing, it's like, searching here, the query is blank plus Game Boy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that stuff. So from that point back up to here, I'm going to delete it. And then from the query point to here, I'm going to delete that. So now this may look atrocious, but just bear with me. So now what I'm going to do is put in the title field. So now it's blue, so I can tell you that it's actually a field type, right? I go into here, and then you have to close it with the parentheses, right? So you got to have parentheses surrounding the whole thing. You'll get a preview result at the bottom, and it should look proper that way. So now I'm going to go Google search. I'm going to name it something useful. I'm going to make the button short. I'm going to call it Google. And then you can give it a cool look. So maybe you want it to look blue. It's a blue button. And now I've added a field. So the cool thing is I can add that field to this same place. Just customize the card and show the Google search. Boom. Now I got a nice active Google search. So the great thing is I can go back into here and I'm like, oh, I want to see this Addams Family thing. I'm going to go pick the image. Perfect. It took me right there. And I click this image. Yeah, that looks terrible. Perfect. Let me copy it. There we go. And then if I hit enter, it'll open this little prompt and I can just paste and it'll just automatically just grab it and in you go. And now because I've added that attachment, you'll see that it once you refresh, I thought it'd be live. Apparently it's not. There it is. Now I can see that this is cropped out in a weird way and I don't really like it. It's going to drive my OCD nuts. So I'm going to customize the fields and I'm just going to make them fit. So if you fit, then it won't like zoom in on a section of the image. And now that'll make this look a lot more attractive. So that's a way to make a list, and you can just query all kinds of stuff this way. Like we didn't spend too long doing this. And you can see that there's a lot of different ways that you could work with this, right? I've already just done a whole whack of cool stuff. Like, for example, I could sort this entire list by the number of sales on price charting each year. Boom. Unsurprisingly, Mario Land, big shock of shocks, right? Pokemon, big shock of shocks. But yeah, you can see I didn't put in a whole lot of effort, and I've already got this. So this is just an example. I've now merged Moby Games and price charting. You can see that I've made it now a parent-child relationship, and you can see that I've got a gigantic dumpster of a mess to clean up. But you can see that what I've showed you with dedupe means you could actually do it fairly quickly, and so it doesn't have to be that painful. I'm just going to show you one other thing that I really like, and this is the attachments images. So there are both like apps, but there's also little scripts that you can add. So attachments, if I search for that, you can see at the bottom there's these scripts. These are ones that people have submitted. This Alex Wolf guy has submitted some really great stuff. Like this one is really handy. Converting attachments to URLs, so you can get, it gives you a temporary URL for each image that's in your thing. So if you want to like grab stuff out of your Airtable without using the API, you can use that, which is nice. But this is how you can just consume URLs to a place, right? So I'm just going to add this script. It's going to be like, oh my gosh, we want all of your data. That's fine, whatever. I don't care. So then I would pick, okay, I want to convert the URLs from the games tab and say this was actually an image URL. Then I could go, okay, well, put whatever attachment you grab into the attachments field, and it will run through everything. So if you've got a huge list of image URLs, you can really quickly fill up this information on the side. But again, you kind of have to have that. That's where something like Octoparse can be really useful, or another scraper, because then you can scrape the image URLs and just chuck those into something, right? So yeah, I mean, this was the start of the Game Boy database. So if you're curious about this, there's a little bit of an inside view with the real basics of what I would do. Obviously, there's all kinds of crazy stuff you can do. Like I automate, weekly reports with this using the automations. You can actually trigger an email, send Slack messages, and just pull data from your database into that email. And then you can make a whole dashboard. So if I want to make some crazy dashboard, it shows number of games per genre and all that kind of fun stuff, I could do that from that view. So yeah. Now, the next things I'm going to have to try and tackle here, but I will, this walkthrough is getting a bit long, so I won't do it now, is tackling other languages. So I'll probably do that in a subsequent video and just share with you guys. But you can do this in Google Sheets. You can use the equals Google Translate function, which is really, really helpful. But often I'll just pull them into my Airtable, and then once I've mangled the data, then I'll actually use the Google Translate function, which requires the Google Translate API. So you basically just plug in your API key, and then you can say, okay, translate from Japanese to English or whatever. So it can be useful to do that. I've done that before. In fact, I've done that with my Super Famicom list that I was working on with Johnny a bit. And yeah, I was trying to put all the pieces together, and that's what's nice about Airtable is I can go, okay, we're going to grab a whole bunch of data from here, grab data from there, grab data from there, and put it back together and put it into more of a cohesive package. So that's why I like it. And I tend to start every project like this. I like to go, okay, well, what are all the different lists I'm going to need to keep track of? I've got these items, I've got this record. I did this for, I've got a great big massive Club Penguin document. So it's the entire history of every clothing item that we released in Club Penguin, every room that we released, all the different data points in one spot. That's nice. I don't have to go digging through wikis or whatever to go find this stuff. Because a lot of times you'll find you spend tons of time pissing around looking on different websites trying to find anything. This way you can just kind of just grab it, throw it into a database, put it together, and you'll find that you'll get a lot of insights from it. So yeah, that was a little bit of Airtable for you. Hope this was helpful, and thanks for watching.